I think that having someone there in my corner to be like, you can do it, you can finish it, has always been like a great help.
Welcome to Publishing Deciphered, where we talk about all things writing, editing, and of course, publishing. I'm Sarah Dornsythe, and today I'll be speaking with Emma-Grace Clarke on the relationship between editors and writers. My guest today is a published author, writer for the Antithesis Journal blog, and the winner of the Women's Voices Writing Competition for 2020. Emma-Grace Clarke, welcome to the show.
Hi Sarah, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Before we get started, when did you begin writing?
It was actually relatively recently. I was doing like a Bachelor of History and I was going into my honours year kind of during lockdown, and I was writing at that point. I'd done Women's Voices, and then I had this sort of brainwave that I didn't really like what I was doing, so I just decided to jump straight into writing. I'm doing a Master's of Creative Writing, Editing and Publishing now. Yeah, so I suppose it hasn't been that long, really.
And yet you've accomplished so much. So I began the first draft to help myself and other writers find out more about the road to being published or working in publishing. And one of the things that I think people hold a lot of interest in is the writer-editor relationship. You've had a lot of first-hand experience working with your editor at Antithesis, who is Laura Franks. Can you tell us a bit about what that writer-editor relationship is like for you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's not as esoteric as I think a lot of people kind of view it to be. We've been working together for maybe about a few months. I'm not 100% sure how long it's been. It feels like 6 months, but that might actually be a bit of a stretch. But I suppose our relationship has developed and is developing as we continue to work with each other. So I suppose, the editorial relationship that I have is a great one.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you guys have a great working relationship. So given that you've got a strong rapport with Laura, how do you think you usually respond to feedback or being told to make changes to your work? Do you think that it's a bit nerve-wracking?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I probably might be in the minority because I'm a bit of a masochist when it comes to my own stories. I like getting feedback on them, and I also like criticism. Sometimes even when I get like a nice bit of feedback, I'll be like, yeah, but what's wrong with it? Like, how do I change it to make it better? It's like anything, showing people your work can be nerve-wracking, but she's never one to be like prescriptive.
So you've been doing multiple pieces for Antithesis. It's not just the one story that or long-form story that you've been working on. You've been working on quite a few short stories.
Yeah. So I write 2 stories a month. I do a serial called The Rippled, which is about like dreams coming to life. And then there are short stories. I tend to draw myself towards like eco-fiction. And then I normally do some like queer fiction. And a lot of stuff about the family.
Well, it all sounds very intriguing. Now, unfortunately, we do have to wrap up. So what final advice could you give to somebody who is seriously considering publishing their own writing?
I'm going to be hypocritical and say back yourself. You've got to remember that your story is just as important as anyone else's, and that you were the person to tell it. Like, reaching an audience is always, it's always the ideal, but there is just something quite beautiful about reaching a small audience. And also publish for yourself. There's always like a sort of oasis in storytelling that we can always like come back to in times of stress or need. So that's why you should publish your own work.
Well, I think that sounds like some excellent advice. But that brings us to the end of the show. Emma-Grace, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. It's been great fun.
And stay tuned, because on our next episode, we'll be talking to the other half of this writing-editing duo, Laura Franks.